From Intervention to Invitation looks at the history and future direction of baby health clinics in the Hunter region. It was written by Lynn Millington and Elizabeth Jones. When the first clinic was established in 1914, there was an infant mortality rate of 6.8%. The role of the baby health clinic sister was to help mothers care for and feed their children. Jean Johnson was a baby health clinic sister in 1945, and her job was similar.
On the right type of feeding and how to bring up that child right through till going to school, and we encouraged them to come in for their immunisation. Everything was on the preventive health field.
Over the years, the role of this specialised sister has changed. These days, early childhood sisters care for the whole family.
It's because of the stresses of the 80s and the disintegration of the extended family. There's a greater emphasis on education and teaching people parenting skills and the ability to cope in today's society.
Probably the greatest change, though, has been the assistance single mothers receive. In 1945, when Jean was a sister, single mothers were given only food orders from the government.
You never left your husband in those days because there was no support services. You'd get food orders. You'd get a very minimum. I've forgotten, it might have been, if I said £7, it wouldn't be £7 a week. I've just forgotten. It was absolute pittance.
Those interested parties were narrowed down to 3 which submitted detailed proposals. They were Gary Ashford of the Bistro, Lloyd Moffat of the Oyster Barn and the successful bidder Neil Slater, who we were unable to contact late today for comment. The proposal by the Port Authority calls for the integrity of the foreshore development to be maintained, with the site not substantially redeveloped. Neil Slater and his associates' plan includes a restaurant and coffee shop and a takeaway food area utilising both indoor and outdoor parts. A local panel of experts has assessed the project in cooperation with the Council's Planning Department. The operator of the seaplane service from Newcastle Harbour to Rose Bay, Aquatic Air, will also be accommodated in the layout of the new development to be known as Scratchleys. An official agreement between Neil Slater and the Ports Authority could be finalised as early as tomorrow, with the authority saying more details will be released then.
Today's inquiries focused on the murdered man's romantic relationships. Police say they can't ignore the possibility that an aggrieved boyfriend of one of Brown's 3 de factos may have had a score to settle.
To date, we've interviewed all the de factos and we tend to interview their boyfriends within the next couple of days.
Detectives have now managed to piece together a picture of the events that took place at the Black Hill property at the time of the murder.
Mr Brown and his wife retired at 10:15 and 10:30 p.m. The next thing we heard is de facto said to him at 12:10 a.m, or he said to her that he heard someone in the house. She told him he was imagining things. Some seconds later, she heard 2 loud bangs. The intruder then walked around to her side of the bed before walking out of the room.
Police say the assailant opened a jewellery box on a bedside table, but took nothing. Brown's de facto, Robin Hull, in a state of shock, was unable to identify her husband's killer, leaving police mystified to the assailant's identity or even a motive.
The weapon used, we believe to be a 12-gauge shotgun with SG shells. Now these shells don't have a wide expanse when they are fired. As such, the close proximity of Mr Brown and his wife would indicate that they were fired directly at Mr Brown, not at his wife.
But police are not just concentrating on the murdered man's personal life. With John Brown well known nationwide in greyhound circles, the investigation is about to turn to the racing fraternity. Leslie Robinson for NBN News.
Well, the Trust is very keen for it to go ahead. Indications are that the government are prepared to look a little bit further down the track at a tighter proposal. So we're reasonably confident that we'll be able to pull something together.
What the Trust is so optimistic about is a 5,500 square metre building which it hopes will soon cover this site. The beauty of the proposal as far as the Trust is concerned is that it won't cost it a cent for at least 3 years. The state government has been asked to lease the Crown land to businessman Basil Sellers, owner of the Newcastle Falcons, to build a 5,000-seat stadium. The Falcons have had 90% capacity crowds in this, one of their worst seasons ever, and coach Ken Cole says in coming years they will definitely fill the extra seats. But the building won't depend only on basketball to pay for its keep. The seats will be removable, allowing it also to be used as an exhibition hall. And that is only part of the future Falcons story. Within 5 years, Sellers plans to build a $35 million sports entertainment complex, either at the ISC or the showground. The smaller facility would be repurchased by the Showground Trust. Trust managers claim it will pay for itself in takings from exhibitions, possibly more than $2,000 a day. However, the Showground already has an exhibition centre and it is hardly paying its way. The Showground Trust has only been able to attract a handful of exhibitions to the Hall of Industry this year, and at $1,000 a day, that's an awful lot of underutilised space. However, Kim Sharp insists that the problem is in fact that the area is too small to cater to the big exhibitions touring on the national circuit.
This new building that's proposed will have 3 times the capacity of our existing exhibition building. That will allow us to attract international and national styles of exhibitions.
The 220-hectare Greenpoint estate has been embroiled in controversy for years. Its prime position on the foreshores of Lake Macquarie make it a lucrative target for developers, but locals have fought a long and hard battle to keep Greenpoint green. Lake Macquarie Council has now decided to buy a 41-hectare land parcel for $1 million. The area will be reserved for future parkland, with a trust formed to oversee council's plans.
I believe that the council has made a decision that we want as much of Greenpoint as a natural park that we can get. This particular piece of land was offered to us for purchase. We've purchased it.
But the timing of council's move has been criticised by the ALP faction on council. They say it preempts the release of a consultant's report on the environmental importance of the estate.
Council's in the position where it had commissioned a report several months ago, and that report, as a result of a question of mine, is to be handed down within the next couple of weeks. Now, Council has in fact made a decision without considering the input of that report.
While he denies any indecent haste, Alderman Walsh expressed some concern that the consultants may have overstepped the bounds of their brief.
If the consultant, for instance, was to say that council should acquire or buy the whole of Greenpoint, I think that's outside their brief to tell us what to do.
While last night's decision is the first step towards a partial bushland reserve, some development could still take place at Greenpoint.
I believe that with a very limited, minimal amount of development on the peripheries of Greenpoint, then council can acquire the majority of Greenpoint for the people of Lake Macquarie and maintain it as a park.
Newcastle's public prosecutors have operated in less than ideal conditions for some time, crammed into the old school opposite the Family Law Court. They'll now do the same work with far greater ease from just across the road in the first floor of the new Colonial Mutual building. The public prosecution staff now have little to complain about in terms of comfort. Although the area is still small, the offices have new furniture and are for 1 or 2 rather than 4 or 5. And there are ancillary benefits on this side of the street, as noted by the Attorney-General.
$1 view this one. When you clean it, does he actually get through to the water?
The office prosecutes criminal matters in the district, local and Supreme Courts. According to John Dowd, the Newcastle division will want for little under his leadership, as he plans to make it a model for all the regional prosecution offices.
Newcastle is, as far as I'm concerned, the flagship of how we're going to run criminal proceedings, the relationship between the prosecutor and the court and the defence and transcription services and legal aid. So for me, I'll be watching Newcastle very closely.
At first the problem was just a burst pipe, but so great was the water pressure, a 30-metre section of the roadway was split and then tilted at a dramatic angle, forcing police to close the road in front of Sims Metal. The burst pipe is one of two 375-centimetre mains supplying Stockton. Waterboard crews say the remaining line will ensure Stockton doesn't run out of water, but tonight they face the task of digging up the road to mend the break. Meanwhile, traffic is being diverted along side roads and delays are minimal.
The NRMA insures half the vehicles on New South Wales roads. Its records therefore provide a relatively good picture of thefts and accidents. Newcastle motorists are costing the state's biggest insurer less than either Wollongong or Sydney. 8% of Newcastle policyholders made collision claims in the last year. That's comparable to Wollongong, but half the Sydney result. The figures are more dramatic in the theft stakes. Newcastle cost the NRMA $600,000. If that seems substantial, compare it to the Wollongong and Sydney totals.
I think the Newcastle police have done a particularly good job in keeping down car theft. And obviously the other reason is that the Newcastle people are more careful with their driving.
The release of the figures was strategically timed to coincide with the opening of the NRMA's new centre for salvaged vehicles at Gateshead. The wrecks will be sold at regular auctions, recovering more than $3 million a year. The centre will clear 1,800 vehicles a week from across the northern half of the state. All the cars here are, technically speaking, write-offs, so let the buyer beware if some don't look as damaged as others. This Falcon, for example, had only done several thousand kilometres before it took a plunge in salt water. The new owner will start to see the effects of that within months. The NRMA has appointed itself champion of the state's motorists in a long-running war with the government for more road funding and is not missing any opportunities to keep the heat on.
The federal government takes 30 cents of every litre of fuel you buy, but returns just 5 cents for roadworks.
The NRMA says it will continue to fight for the petrol taxes until the government caves in. Rosshampton, NBN News.
It was Bruce Baird at his most congenial. On a tour of the region he readily admits is home to probably the state's worst roads, he was clearly primed to appear understanding and ultimately generous. First of all, there was the Bowman's Crossing Bridge at Jerry's Plains. Acknowledged by the Road Traffic Authority and local police as a black spot, its age, narrowness and constant flooding resulted in the formation of the Bowman's Crossing Bridge Committee earlier this year.
With the 3 cents a litre petrol levy being put on in New South Wales for road improvement, this bridge is certainly a black spot on Main Road 213. That has come from official sources, not just our own vision, and it's time that something was done. In the recent heavy rains we had 2 vehicles washed into the river, almost with the loss of 3 lives, and we feel it's just not good enough.
Today, the whole committee, along with residents and several coal truck drivers, were there to meet with Mr Baird. Committee chairman Ian Short was hoping to get a guarantee the minister would further investigate the bridge's future. What he got was a whole lot more.
The bridge is obviously in bad state of repair. We've actually committed today that we're going to start work on the design of the bridge and made a commitment that in 3 years' time we'll start work on it.
From there, the minister travelled to a meeting with Singleton Shire Council, and the state of local roads once again dominated the conversation. Several councillors expressed concern about the safety of some areas. Others mentioned the necessity of good road and rail links for the area's coal industry. From Mr Baird, there was a minimum of debate and more guarantees this time that roads would be included in future funding programs. During his busy day, Mr Baird also toured the much-talked-about roads of the Cessnock district, for which he had saved his biggest announcement of the day.
Over the next 3 years, we plan to spend $45 million in the Cessnock electorate area.
Any ideas where that money's going to be spent in particular?
Well, we're going to spend it on Main Road 220 and also the road out to Beresford. So that's two key areas, and there'll be some, we're looking at bridge replacement programs as well.
Adelaide is one of the high flyers of the NBL and have been for many years. Current Falcons coach Ken Cole was once the mentor of the 36ers, taking them to the national title. He would love to upset his old club at home after suffering a 25-point hammering at Apollo Stadium earlier this season. With players of the calibre of Al Green, one of the all-time greats of the National League, Darryl Pearce, a brilliant three-point shooter, and the best rebounder in the league, Mark Davis, the Falcons' task is huge, to say the least. But last week, the young Newcastle outfit proved they can match it with the heavyweights of the league, going down by the barest of margins to the leaders, Perth. Everett and Johnson will again hold the key for the Falcons in what should be a highly entertaining game.
Last Saturday, this cheeky female fur seal was found exhausted in Newcastle Harbour. National Parks and Wildlife was called in to protect the seal from inquisitive onlookers and to protect the onlookers from the seal, which could have been incited to attack. National Parks usually only hears of a few beach seals each year, yet 4 confirmed seal sightings have been recorded in the last fortnight. It's thought the seals could be chasing schools of fish or simply coming into the coast for a rest. Ranger Janine Floyd says in the interests of the seals and the onlookers, people should observe, but definitely not touch.
And it'd be fantastic if they start living around the area in greater numbers, and we, humans, have to learn to live with them, and that is treat them with respect.
It was the first time a Newcastle Knights graded team had made a Winfield Cup final. Not a bad effort after only 2 years in the big time. Up against the Roosters, it was the boys north of Hornsby who made the early going, and it was in the 23rd minute of the first half that the first points were scored. The Knights put the ball high in the air. Fullback Ashley Gordon plucked it from the pack, gave a great pass to Shane Mackley, and he scored in the corner. Michael Browning added the extras from the sideline and the Knights were looking good. But errors started to creep in and the Roosters hit back from great individual skills from Grant Keating as he dived on his own in-goal kick to score, and it was all tied up at 6-all. Easts added a penalty for an 8-6 lead at half-time, and right after the break it all happened. 2 minutes after the resumption, East put in the grubber kick. It came off a Knights player and Dean Lindsay fell on the crumbs to score. 2 minutes later, it was Lindsay again, this time with a brilliant solo effort. The Knights were caught short on the left flank. Lindsay got around the defence, sprinted almost the length of the field, changed directions to the middle, got through some feeble Knights defence, and finally made it all the way to the line. 20 points to 6, and it looked all over, but Shane Mackley had other thoughts. East tried the kick over the top once more, but Mackley took it 10 metres from his own line, beat the first line of defence, and with great determination sprinted the near length of the field to get the Knights a little closer. But it was all to no avail as the Roosters were home 20 points to 10 to end the season for the Knights. Wanderers finished third after the end of the home and away matches in Newcastle Rugby Union and were expected to be too strong for Mayfield East in the elimination final. But someone forgot to tell May East as they powered their way to a 9-4 victory over the Blues and advanced to the preliminary final next week. Led by a strong forward pack, May East took control late in the match to run out good winners. University and Merewether Carlton clash tomorrow in the major semi-final at the number 2 sports ground, the winner advancing to this year's grand final. Over the road at the number 1 sports ground, a shock result in the preliminary final of the Newcastle Australian Football League. Nelson Bay were red-hot favourites to go into the grand final next week against Warners Bay by outclassing Wallsend. The Red and White Swans had a tough battle last week and in a repeat performance came home strongly in the second half to snatch an amazing victory. Troy Luft kept the Bay in the hunt during the third term, but not even his great talents could deny the Swans, and they will now meet Warners Bay for the right to be called premiers for 1989.
Country music lovers say the family is at the centre of their songs, and what better day to play than Father's Day. Country Music Park was a perfect setting for a leisurely outing for the whole family, and there was no shortage of dads enjoying the sun and the special treatment. The Central Coast Country Music Association booked 5 bands, including top recording artists as well as local talent. The family day was originally planned earlier this year, but rain forced the association to abandon its plans. Today, their luck changed.
Yeah, we've had a bad run with weather in recent years, particularly this year. Both Mother's Day and Easter were both washed out, so we're very pleased to get a good day.
The former YMCA building is now privately operated, and police say a manager is always on the premises. Tenants told police there was no hint that the victim was in trouble until it was too late.
Apparently one of the residents saw smoke coming when he was outside the room and went to investigate. He found the room filled with smoke.
There was no cries for help?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Detectives say the man, who was in his late 60s, had a history of seizures, and it's thought he may have fallen onto the heater shortly before 10 o'clock this morning during one of those attacks. Residents covered the man with a wet towel, but it's understood he had already died of severe burns. Police are still trying to locate relatives.
Today, the government and the Australian Koala Foundation united to spread the word on conservation that could save this special creature from extinction. In Canberra, Federal Environment Minister Graham Richardson launched a koala kit for kids.
The only thing that can finish off our koala is us, and we'll have to make sure that we use some discipline, some common sense, and hopefully education to make sure that that process is reversed completely.
Nearer to home from Raymond Terrace along the Tomaree Peninsula is one place that koalas can call home. But even in this perfect environment, their future is threatened by development.
We need to ensure that the koala populations don't become cut off, that they don't become isolated as little islands. Should that happen, the long-term survival of those particular koala colonies is not good. They would perhaps die out, so that they need to be linked by corridors of natural or semi-natural bushland.
It seems koalas have never had it easy. Until 1927 they were hunted for their pelts. Now there is another danger. Around this time of the year, the maturing males are forced to leave their colony to set up a new home of their own. This is where a modern killer threatens, the motor car. Luckily for the injured koalas, there's a helping hand in the form of Toronto's Audrey Koosman of the Native Animal Trust, who nurses them back to the bush. If you're out looking for these shy native creatures, you'll find them pretty hard to spot. One clue is a track like this, made by sharp little claws. Normally you'll only find one koala per tree, and best places to find them are like here, the Raymond Terrace Golf Course, Nelson Bay Golf Course, or around Lemon Tree Passage.
Rebecca Skinner for NBN News.